I was sitting 3 spaces down in a bank parking lot when I watched my wife of 32 years walk out of First National Bank with tears streaming down her face. She wiped them away before getting in her car, the same way she'd done every Tuesday morning for 20 years. And I realized I'd been living with a woman I didn't know at all. Not because she'd been lying to me, but because I'd never asked her why she needed to. My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm 64 years old. I've been married to Catherine for 32 years. We have 2 grown children, a modest home, a life that looks, from the outside, perfectly normal. But every Tuesday for the past 20 years, my wife has left our house at 10:15 a.m., driven to First National Bank, and cried in the parking lot afterward. And until 3 weeks ago, I had no idea. This is the story of what I discovered when I finally followed her. What I learned about the woman I thought I knew. And what her secret taught me about love, trauma, and the weight of things we carry alone. But to understand why Catherine needed that bank account, why she needed $200,000 hidden from me, you need to understand something about secrets. Sometimes the people we love aren't hiding things from us. They're hiding things for themselves. Protection they need. Safety they can't trust anyone else to provide. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't demanding the truth. It's creating a space safe enough that the truth can finally come out. This is that story. Catherine and I met when we were both 28. She was a librarian. I was a high school history teacher. We met at a community book sale, both reaching for the same worn copy of East of Eden. She let me have it. I asked her to coffee instead. We were married within a year. Built what I thought was a good life. We had 2 children, Michael and Sarah, who were grown now with families of their own. We had a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. We had routines, traditions, a rhythm to our days that felt like contentment. But there were things about Catherine I never fully understood. The way she needed her own bank account, even though we had a joint one. The way she'd tense up if I suggested a spontaneous weekend trip without weeks of planning. The way she kept cash hidden in odd places around the house, and book spines, taped under drawers, folded inside her winter coats. Just a habit, she'd say when I'd find another stash. Makes me feel secure. I thought it was quirky. Endearing, even. Catherine had always been careful with money. Practical. She clipped coupons. She bought generic brands. She drove the same Honda Civic for 15 years. But every Tuesday, she'd leave the house dressed more carefully than usual. A little more makeup. Her good coat. And she'd be gone for exactly 2 hours. Just errands, she'd say when I asked. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? We had a good marriage. We laughed together. We took care of each other. We'd weathered the usual storms, job losses, sick parents, the hard years when money was tight and our kids needed everything. But there was a space between us. A space I told myself was normal. Everyone needs privacy. Everyone has their own interior life. Except that space had been growing. Slowly. Imperceptibly. Like a crack in a foundation you don't notice until the whole house starts to shift. The counseling had been my idea. Not because we were fighting, we barely fought. But because Catherine seemed to be disappearing. Right there in our living room, right there across the dinner table, she'd drift somewhere I couldn't follow. "Are you happy?" I'd asked her one night. She'd looked at me with something like sadness. "I'm safe," she'd said. That's enough. But it wasn't an answer. And I was too afraid to push. For 20 years, I'd watched her leave every Tuesday. For 20 years, I told myself it didn't matter. That everyone deserves their secrets. That trust means not asking questions. But sitting in that parking lot, Watching my wife emerge from First National Bank with tears streaming down her face, silent tears she wiped away before getting in her car, I realized something terrible. I'd been so busy respecting her privacy that I'd never noticed she was in pain. She'd been carrying something for 20 years. Something heavy enough that she cried every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. in the parking lot of a bank. Something she'd never trusted me enough to share. And I'd never asked why. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever realized you didn't really know someone you loved? That there were parts of them hidden so deep you never thought to look? Drop a comment below. Because sometimes the hardest part of love is learning to see what's been in front of us all along. I didn't confront her that day. I went home, made dinner, and when Catherine returned at 12:15, exactly on schedule, I asked her how her errands went. "Fine," she said, hanging up her coat. "Just the usual." And I watched her lie to me. Watched her wash her hands. Watched her avoid my eyes. Watched her retreat to the bedroom with a headache she'd nurse until evening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her face in that parking lot. The way she'd gripped the steering wheel. The way her shoulders had shaken with sobs she only allowed herself in that brief, private moment before driving home to me. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 32 years of marriage. I went through her things. Not aggressively. Not throwing drawers open or tearing through closets. But carefully. Methodically. Looking for something, anything, that would explain Tuesday mornings. In her desk drawer, beneath old tax returns and birthday cards from our children, I found a small leather notebook. The kind you'd use for a journal. But it wasn't a journal. It was a ledger. Page after page of careful entries, all in Catherine's precise handwriting. January 7th, 1997, $200. January 14th, 1997, $200. January 21st, 1997, $200. January 28th, 1997, $200. On and on. Every Tuesday. $200. For 20 years. I did the math. Roughly $200,000. Money I'd never seen. Money that had somehow disappeared from our lives without me noticing. My hands shook as I turned the pages. There were no explanations. No notes. Just dates and amounts. A record of money flowing out of our lives every single week for 2 decades. I heard Catherine's car in the driveway. Quickly, I put the ledger back exactly as I'd found it. That evening, I couldn't eat. I pushed food around my plate while Catherine talked about needing to call Sarah, about the garden needing attention, about ordinary things that suddenly felt like a performance. "Catherine," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, "is everything okay?" She looked up, fork halfway to her mouth. "Of course." "Why?" "You'd tell me if something was wrong? If you needed something?" Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe. Or hope. "Thomas, what's this about?" I couldn't do it. Couldn't confront her. Couldn't demand answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. "I just want you to know I'm here. Whatever it is." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know. But her hand was trembling. The next Tuesday, I didn't follow her. But I did something worse. I called the bank. "First National Bank, how may I help you?" "Hi, yes, I'm calling about an account. My wife, Catherine Brennan, has been making weekly transactions for some time, and I just wanted to verify." "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't discuss account information without the account holder's permission. I'm her husband. We've been married for 32 years. I understand, but unless you're listed on the account, I can't help you. Privacy regulations." So the account was only in her name. Money I'd never seen. A secret she'd kept for 20 years. That night, I made a decision. The next Tuesday, I wouldn't just follow her to the bank. I'd wait for her inside. I got to First National Bank at 9:45 a.m. Sat in the lobby with a newspaper I pretended to read. At 10:15, Catherine walked in. She went straight to the counter, asked for someone named Mitchell. A young man in his 30s appeared, greeted her warmly, too warmly, like someone who'd known her for years, and led her to a private office. I waited 30 minutes. Then 45. Finally, at 11:05, they emerged. Catherine's eyes were red. Mitchell handed her tissues, said something that made her nod, and walked her to the door. As she turned to leave, she saw me. The color drained from her face. Thomas. Catherine. We stood there in the bank lobby, 32 years of marriage suspended between us. We need to talk, I said quietly. She nodded. Not here. We went to a diner 3 blocks away. Sat in a booth in the back. Catherine ordered coffee she didn't touch. How long have you known, she asked finally. That you go to the bank every Tuesday? Always. What you're doing there? As of 10 minutes ago. You followed me. For 20 years, Catherine. Every Tuesday. $200. What is it? Gambling? Another family? What could possibly? It's not like that. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean forward to hear. It's never been like that. Then tell me. Please. Just tell me the truth. She looked out the window. A long moment passed. Then, when I was 15 years old, my father beat my mother so badly she lost vision in her left eye. The words hit me like a physical blow. In 32 years, Catherine had never mentioned violence in her childhood. Never mentioned fear. I didn't know, I whispered. I know you didn't. I never told you. She turned to look at me, and her eyes were ancient. He didn't just hit her once, Thomas. It was years. My whole childhood. And the worst part wasn't the violence. It was the unpredictability. Some days he was loving. Brought her flowers. Danced with her in the kitchen. And some days. She stopped. Swallowed hard. My mother finally left him when I was 17. But she had nothing. No money. No credit. She'd been dependent on him for 20 years. He'd controlled everything. And when she left, she had to start over with nothing. Less than nothing. She had debt, trauma, fear. Catherine. She lived in her car for 3 months before she found a room to rent. She worked 2 jobs. She couldn't afford food some days. And I watched her struggle because she'd never had her own money. Never had a safety net. Never had a way out. The coffee shop sounds faded. All I could hear was my wife's voice, finally telling me truth she'd carried for decades. When we got married, she continued, I promised myself I'd never be trapped like that. Never be dependent. Never be without options. So every week, I take money, my money, from my job, and I put it in an account that's only mine. An account you can't access. An account no one can touch. $200,000, I said numbly. $207,600. She said it like a prayer. Like salvation. It's my escape fund. My safety net. My promise to myself that I'll never be my mother. I stared at her. This woman I'd loved for 32 years. This woman who'd been preparing to leave me since the day we got married. You think I'm going to hurt you, I said. After all these years. You think I'm going to become him. No. Her voice broke. That's not it at all. Then help me understand, I said, hearing my voice crack. If you don't think I'm going to hurt you, why do you need escape money? Why have you been preparing to leave me for 20 years? Catherine's hands wrapped around her coffee cup. Thomas, you're the kindest man I've ever known. You've never raised your voice in anger. You've never been controlling or cruel or anything like my father was. But I watched my mother believe the same thing. For years, she told herself he loved her. That the good days meant more than the bad days. That she could manage. That it wouldn't get worse. Until it did. I'm not him. I know that. Logically, I know that. But trauma doesn't care about logic. She finally met my eyes. Do you know what it's like to be a child watching your mother get hit? To hide in your closet while your father breaks dishes in the kitchen? To learn that the people who say they love you can hurt you the most? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I'd grown up in a stable home. Boring, even. Predictable. Safe. My therapist, yes, I've had a therapist for 30 years, she explained it once. She said trauma rewires your brain. Makes you see danger everywhere. Makes you need control, need options, need escape routes. Even when there's no danger. Even when you're safe. You've been in therapy for 30 years and never told me? Every Tuesday at 9 a.m. For an hour. Then I go to the bank. The pieces clicked into place. The careful timing. The 2-hour window. The tears in the parking lot. The money, I said slowly. You're not saving it to leave me. You're saving it because you need to know you could leave. If you had to. Yes. She said it like a confession. Like absolution. I need to know I have choices. That I'm not trapped. That if everything falls apart, even though it won't, even though you're good and I'm safe, I have options. I'm not my mother. I'm not dependent. I'm not helpless. I sat back against the vinyl booth, feeling like I'd been punched. For 20 years, you've been living with one foot out the door. No. Her voice was fierce suddenly. For 20 years, I've been staying because I chose to stay. Don't you see? The money isn't about leaving. It's about choosing to stay. Every Tuesday, I could take that money and disappear. Start over. Leave. But I don't. I come home to you. Because I want to. Because it's my choice. But you never trusted me enough to tell me. Catherine's face crumpled. How do you tell someone that your love comes with an escape clause? That no matter how good they are, you're always watching for the moment they change? That you're keeping money hidden because some broken part of you is always waiting for the other shoe to drop? You tell them the truth, I said quietly. You trust that they'll understand. And if you'd left? If knowing I had this secret, this money, this whole separate life every Tuesday, if that had made you realize I'm too damaged? Too broken? If you'd decided I wasn't worth the complication? The words hung between us. And I finally understood. Catherine hadn't been protecting herself from me. She'd been protecting herself from losing me. Because if I'd known about her trauma, her therapy, her desperate need for control, I might have left. I might have decided she was too much work. Too complicated. Too wounded. So she'd carried it alone. Hidden it. Made herself small enough and normal enough and easy enough that I'd never have to deal with the messy truth of who she really was. Catherine. I reached across the table and took her hands. They were ice cold. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've been married to you for 32 years. The real you. Not some performance. You think I didn't notice the hidden cash? The tension in your shoulders? The way you need 3 exit routes mapped before we go anywhere new? I noticed. I just didn't know why. And I'm so sorry, that I never asked. That I let you carry this alone. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The therapist said I should tell you. Years ago. Said keeping secrets was creating distance. But I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk losing you. You're not going to lose me. Not for this. Not for anything. You say that now. Catherine. I squeezed her hands tighter. Keep the money. All of it. I don't care. You need it? Keep it. You need to go to the bank every Tuesday and make sure it's still there? Do it. You need to know you have options? Then have them. I'm not asking you to give up your safety net. I'm asking you to let me know it exists. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You think your trauma makes you unlovable, I continued. You think needing control makes you difficult. You think your mother's pain makes you broken. But all I see is a woman who survived something terrible and built a life anyway. A woman who chose me every single Tuesday for 20 years, even when she had the means to walk away. That's not broken, Catherine. That's the strongest thing I've ever heard. But the money is yours. Will always be yours. I don't want it. I don't need access to it. It's your safety. Your choice. Your power. And I'm glad you have it. Truly. She was fully crying now. I thought you'd be angry. Betrayed. I'm sad, I admitted. Sad that you've been carrying this alone. Sad that I didn't create a space safe enough for you to share it. But angry? Never. Thomas. We have work to do, I said gently. I need to understand your trauma better. You need to learn to trust me with your wounds, not just your strengths. We probably need to see your therapist together. But Catherine, we're going to do that work together. Not with you carrying it alone anymore. We sat in that diner for 3 hours. Catherine told me things she'd never said aloud. About hiding in closets. About the sound of her mother crying. About learning to read moods and anticipate violence. About the day her mother finally left, and the day her father showed up at their new apartment with flowers and apologies. She almost went back, Catherine whispered. She almost believed him again. But I begged her not to. And she stayed strong. For me. Where is she now? She passed away 8 years ago. Breast cancer. I remember. You were devastated. You never knew why. It wasn't just that she died. It was that she finally got free, really free, and then she only got 10 years of freedom before cancer took her. 10 years after a lifetime of fear. It felt so unfair. Is that when you started putting in more money? Catherine nodded. I started with $50 a week when we got married. After she died, I increased it to $200. Like I could save her retroactively. Like if I had enough money, enough security, I could protect her memory. That evening, we drove home together. Catherine showed me the ledger, walked me through every entry. Showed me the account statements. The balance that represented 20 years of choosing to stay. I want to meet Mitchell, I said. The banker. Why? Because he's been part of your Tuesday ritual for years. I want to thank him for taking care of you. Catherine looked at me like I'd suggested flying to the moon. But the next Tuesday, we went to the bank together. Mitchell greeted us both warmly, if somewhat confused. Mr. Brennan, it's good to finally meet you. You knew about me? Of course. Mrs. Brennan talks about you every week. About your kindness. Your patience. How you make her laugh. He smiled. She also made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, this account goes to you. It's all documented. Legal. I looked at Catherine. You left me everything. Of course I did. It's not about keeping it from you, Thomas. It's about knowing I have control over giving it. That it's my choice. Catherine and I started seeing her therapist together. Dr. Morrison helped me understand things I'd never known about trauma. How it lives in the body. How safety isn't logical. How healing isn't linear. Your wife has PTSD, Dr. Morrison explained in our third session. From childhood trauma. The money, the routines, the control, these aren't character flaws. They're survival mechanisms. They kept her alive when she was young, and they keep her feeling safe now. So she'll always need the account? Probably. But what matters is whether she can share that need with you. Whether she can let you see her vulnerability without fear of judgment or abandonment. We worked on it. Catherine learned to tell me when she was triggered. When something I said or did, however innocent, made her feel unsafe. And I learned to not take it personally. To understand that her fear wasn't about me. It was about old wounds that would never fully heal. I'm sorry I can't just be normal, she said one night. You are normal, I told her. Trauma is normal. Survival is normal. You're not broken, Catherine. You're adapted. And I love every adaptation, because it means you survived. Catherine still goes to the bank every Tuesday. Sometimes I go with her. Sometimes I don't. But now, when she comes home, she tells me about her morning. About what she and Dr. Morrison discussed. About how the balance has grown. About how it makes her feel. Safe, she says. It makes me feel safe. And I tell her I'm glad. Because I want her to feel safe. Always. Last month, on our anniversary, Catherine did something unexpected. She added my name to the account. You don't have to, I started. I want to, she said. Not because I'm giving you control. But because I trust you not to take it. I trust you to understand that having access isn't the same as using it. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is respecting their need for boundaries. I cried. For the first time in our marriage, I cried in front of her. Cried for the girl who hid in closets. For the woman who'd been carrying a weight alone for 20 years. For the trust she was offering me now. Thank you, I whispered. No, she said. Thank you. For waiting. For asking. For loving me enough to understand that I'm complicated and that's okay. What I've learned in the past 6 months is this: love isn't just about being together. It's about how you hold each other's wounds. Catherine's trauma taught her that safety is an illusion. That people who love you can hurt you. That the only person you can trust is yourself. And for 20 years, I proved her wrong by proving her right. I gave her space. I didn't pry. I let her keep her secrets because I thought that's what respect looked like. But what she needed wasn't space. She needed someone to see her hiding and invite her out. To say, I see you're scared, and that's okay. Show me your fear. I can handle it. Some people survive trauma and come out needing less. They build walls. They withdraw. They decide never to need anyone again. But Catherine survived trauma and came out needing more. More proof. More security. More control. More evidence that she wouldn't be trapped again. And that's okay. Different people heal differently. Different wounds require different medicine. The money will always be there. The Tuesday routine will probably never change. Catherine will always need to know she has options, has power, has control. But now she knows I know. And that changes everything. Because secrets aren't just about what you hide. They're about what you feel you have to carry alone. And when someone says, "Give me that burden, let me carry it with you," that's when healing begins. Not fixing. Not changing. Not making the trauma disappear. Just carrying it together instead of alone. Last Tuesday, Catherine asked if I wanted to come to therapy with her. "It's your space," I said. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. You're part of my healing now." So we went together. Sat in Dr. Morrison's office. And Catherine told the story of how I followed her to the bank. How I found the ledger. How instead of demanding she give up her security, I told her to keep it. "How did that make you feel?" Dr. Morrison asked her. Catherine looked at me. Really looked at me. And said, "Safe." For the first time in my life, I felt safe enough to be unsafe. I didn't understand what she meant. Dr. Morrison saw my confusion. "Being vulnerable is terrifying for trauma survivors," she explained. "Showing someone your wounds means they could hurt you worse." But Catherine showed you her deepest wound, her need for escape, her inability to fully trust, and you didn't weaponize it. You didn't leave. You didn't judge. You honored it. That's extraordinary. As we left the appointment, walking to our cars in the parking lot, Catherine took my hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For following me. For asking. For not letting me hide forever." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Even if it's messy?" "Especially because it's messy. Messy means real. And real is all I've ever wanted." We drove home separately. She had to stop at the grocery store. I had to pick up dry cleaning. Normal Tuesday errands. But this time, when she left, she texted me, "Be home by 6. Love you." 3 words she'd said 1,000 times before. But this time, I knew what they meant. This time, I knew she was choosing to come home. Choosing me. Not because she was trapped. Not because she had no other option. But because home, our messy, complicated, hard-won home, was where she wanted to be. And that was worth more than $200,000. That was worth everything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever discovered that someone you loved was carrying a weight you never knew about? That the small quirks you found endearing were actually survival mechanisms? That their need for control wasn't about trusting you, it was about trusting themselves? Catherine's Tuesday trips weren't about me. They were about a 15-year-old girl who watched her mother get beaten and promised herself, never again. Never helpless. Never trapped. For 20 years, that girl kept her promise. Even when she married a kind man. Even when she built a safe life. Because trauma doesn't care about evidence. Trauma says, prepare for the worst. Always have an exit. And healing doesn't mean those voices go away. It means choosing trust anyway. Choosing vulnerability anyway. Not because the fear is gone, but because something stronger than fear showed up. For Catherine, that something was me finally asking, "What are you carrying? And can I help?" If you're like Catherine, if you have secret accounts or escape plans that keep you feeling safe, your needs are valid. Your trauma is real. And the right person won't ask you to give up your safety net. They'll just ask to know it exists. If you're like me, if you've just discovered someone you love has been preparing to leave, understand this, it's not about you. It's about wounds that predated you. Your job isn't to fix them. It's to create a space safe enough that they can be unfixed around you. Drop a comment sharing your experience. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is say, "Me too." If this story moved you, next time I want to tell you about a woman who spent years abroad believing her husband was loyal, until she returned home to see the unthinkable. If you want more stories like this, stories that honor the complexity of trauma, healing, and the messy work of loving complicated people, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell so you don't miss them. Because every week, I'm sharing stories about real people facing real questions. Stories that might help you make sense of your own. Thank you for listening to Catherine and Thomas's story. Thank you for sitting with the hard questions. And thank you for understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply saying, "Show me your wounds. I can handle them." I'll see you next time.